Welcome to another NYSAC News video update. My name is Ryan Gregoire. I am your association's legislative director. Today I'm once again joined by Dave Lucas, NYSAC's Director of Finance and Intergovernmental Affairs. So NYSAC recently released its full post-budget legislative program. This serves as our primary advocacy tool to engage with members of the state legislature on what we're pushing for and what we're trying to prevent going into the remainder of this year's legislative session. But today, we wanted to highlight just our top 5 priorities going into the end of the year. And certainly you can find all of this information on the NYSAC website by visiting www.nysac.org/leg advocacy. So let's get right into it, Dave, starting with number 1. Enacting an early intervention covered lives assessment fee on commercial insurance. This is a bill that's sponsored by Senator Reichlin Melnick in the Hudson Valley. He represents Ulster, Rockland, and a small portion of Westchester counties, and Assemblywoman Amy Paulin from Westchester County. Both have been great champions to work with the counties. This is not only a top priority of NYSAC, but also of NYSACHO, the county health officials, and the Kids Can't Wait campaign, which is a coalition group of early intervention advocates out there. Dave, can you tell our listeners a little bit about what this $40 million covered lives assessment fee is and how does it help county governments?
Yes, so what it would do basically is it would provide a small percentage assessment on each covered life that an insurance company has in their portfolio. And it's designed to raise $40 million, which would be basically split between the state and the counties, $20 million each, and that would basically cover some of the basic underlying costs of the program, and it would streamline the administrative burden that's experienced by both the county, who's processing all these claims and dealing with the oversight of making sure that children get their services, and the providers who have to go through this labyrinth of insurance rules. Basically, most of that would be eliminated, and this assessment would come in and it would streamline that whole process. And that money would be used instead of state and local resources to make sure this program is fully funded.
That's great, David. Thank you. And for our listeners, one thing to highlight here is this is a first step, right? $40 million, by no means does that cover the entire cost of the early intervention program in New York State. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. This is a first step in the right direction. There's bipartisan support at the leadership level in both houses. We were almost there in the state budget. We almost got this through. It fell a little bit short, but this is a top NYSAC priority going into the end of session. Number 2, Dave, expanding investment options for counties. This was a proposal that NYSAC brought to the attention of the budget director. As many of our listeners will recall, last summer, NYSAC went to you and asked for your feedback. We wanted your thoughts on how to reform and restructure state and local government and the service delivery, the programs that we provide to the residents. This was one of those solutions. Certainly the federal government just passed the American Rescue Plan, ARP, which is going to provide billions of dollars to counties across the country. This is one of those vehicles that will help us deliver more programs and more services to residents by making smart investments with our finances. So Dave, tell us a little bit more about what this program would actually do.
Yes, thanks, Ryan. And I'm glad you brought up the American Rescue Plan. I mean, counties in New York, the 57 counties, not including New York City, will be getting $2.2 billion over the next 2 years, which is not going to be spent immediately. So a lot of it's going to be sitting in bank accounts. So what this bill does, in a nutshell, is it provides parity with New York City, who has an expanded array of investment options today, which would include things like highly rated corporate debt, special money market funds, commercial paper, things that they're not super huge returns on these, but it's far better than the T-bills and most of the things counties get. I mean, everybody who out there who's got a savings account knows you're collecting 0% basically on your money invested in a bank now, and it's not that much different for a county government. We're looking at 0.1% returns on big chunks of our money. This could dramatically expand the investment returns for counties. especially with the ARP funds coming in. We really need to be good stewards with the taxpayers' money, and this is a way to do it. And it doesn't cost the state a penny.
Right.
This is one of those proposals where we know you don't have money, state. This is something that can help us, and it doesn't cost you anything. And it's something already available to New York City. We're just creating parity.
And Dave, you bring up a good point. I should note for our members that none of these proposals that you'll find in our legislative program would have any financial impact on state government. This is the post-budget priorities. We're looking to advance policy that will help counties streamline government processes, streamline and make more efficient the services that we deliver. So we just talked about some human service programs. We talked about some finance opportunities. Let's shift gears a little bit and go to the police reform plans that counties have all submitted. All 57 counties plus the city of New York have submitted police reform and collaboration plans to the state of New York. One of the things that we've noticed that have come out of a lot of these plans, and we've been working with the Sheriff's Association and the personnel directors across the state on, is enacting a series of civil service reforms to help increase diversity within the ranks of our police agencies, that includes sheriff departments, make it easier for employers, county employers, sheriffs, to hire qualified individuals from civil service eligible lists, and really break up some of the bureaucratic red tape that has held back our ability to make a series of these reforms. So there's not a bill out there yet, but we're working with the Sheriff's Association, working with the personnel directors. Stay tuned for that. It's going to be coming. It's going to be another top priority of ours. Something that has achieved widespread bipartisan support across the state. Number 4, we're turning a little bit now to environmental priorities, I should say. And there's a bill out there. It's sponsored by Senator Kaminsky. He's the chair of the Environmental Conservation Committee. And it would strengthen the e-waste recycling system in the state of New York. This is a problem that all of our counties have come to us over the last few years and said, look, the electronic waste system, recycling system, is no longer working for us. It costs New York State counties millions of dollars every year. This program shifts that responsibility back to the producers, and it would create an incentive within the producers to set up their own points of distribution for you to return large bulk electronics. Think those big bulky TVs, giant laptops. And this is another environmental policy that helps counties, doesn't cost the state money, and helps our environment. The 5th area that I wanted to highlight with Dave here is a new bill that's been proposed by 2 freshman members, Senator Jeremy Cooney from Monroe County and Assemblyman John Rivera from Erie County. And this bill would establish the New York State Aid and Incentives for Municipalities Task Force. So this bill is going to be comprised of, this task force is going to be comprised of 7 members. One of the appointees will either be Stephen Aquario, NYSAC's executive director, or his designee. And along with the other municipal associations and a representative from the legislature in each house and the budget director, they're going to be charged with coming up with a series of recommendations to reform the AIM program. Certainly, as all of our listeners know, fixing the aid and incentives program, that shift which has been placed on the burden of county property taxpayers through a redistribution of our county sales tax, was a number 1 priority of ours, Dave. It remains a number 1 priority. I think this bill, and you can talk about this a little bit more, but I think this bill is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I would agree, Ryan. The prior attempts at reforming AIM was to shift the cost from the state to county governments, and it really wasn't reform at all. It was a basic cost shift. And the recipients of the state aid, AIM, is basically revenue sharing by the old terms. Counties lost our access to revenue sharing in the early 1990s. So it was $80 million at the time, or somewhere in that ballpark, that we lost at that time. New York City lost its revenue sharing about 15 years ago. And it's really been money that's been provided to the biggest upstate cities, towns and villages, and really the towns and villages, it's a small amount of funding. And there's been a lot of complaints from them about the old formula just not being very useful anymore because all these communities have changed so much, and the old formula is like shorting some communities and overcompensating others. It's ripe for reform, and it's something that I think this task force is a good first step.
Yeah, and you know, we've talked about 5 bills and 5 policy areas that we want to see achieved by the end of June. But we should also mention, Dave, that a large part of our post-budget advocacy has to do with making sure that certain bills don't pass either house because they have a negative impact on counties.
Yeah, playing defense is a big part of the end of session. A lot of bills come out of the woodwork that are unhelpful for county government, impose new burdens or new costs, and we spend a lot of our time educating the legislature on some of the downsides or unintended consequences of the legislation, and we do spend a large amount of our time doing
Fighting
that.
bills.
Fighting bills.
So for our members out there, engage with your state representative on these top 5 areas. We're going to be pushing it here at your association with our lawmakers up the hill, but also stay tuned for areas that Dave just talked about where we may need you to come in and help us play some defense. So again, thank you for tuning into today's County Conversations NYSAC News video update. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Remember, a strong defense wins championships.
Thanks, everyone.